If you've ever wanted to develop games for the Game Boy Advance, the Sega Genesis, Sega Dreamcast, even the Atari Jaguar, then you're going to want to check out this Kickstarter for Retro Game Designer. What this is a suite of tools based on modules with plugins. I know that sounds confusing because the Kickstarter is confusing. I'll get into that in just a second. Right now they have just over 20 days to go. They're currently at 10%, 9% of the minimum funding with 35 backers. Do the math, and that doesn't really add up. What we have here is the Kickstarter setup is based on complexity. Easiest first, hardest last, or most expensive in this case. Funding, the minimum funding goal is for the adventure game engine at 22,000 euros. The platformer game engine is set at 45,000 euros. Shoot 'em up engine is set at 70,000 euros. RPG engine is set at 100,000, and 3D game engine is set at 150,000. Now the 3D game engine is limited to PlayStation 1 and Sega Dreamcast only. And there's two versions of the backing for the PlayStation. One gets you a USB cable for about $107 US, and the other is about 40 bucks, and it just gets you the ability to export. Like you have your own way of getting your game onto on the official hardware to test it. Now the problem is, now each platform is set up separately. It's a separate pledge, which is fine. You know, if you're only planning on doing, say, Atari Jaguar and PlayStation 1, then you don't really need or want to pay for Game Boy Advance or Sega Genesis or Dreamcast. So for about $40 US, you can pick up the module that you want, or modules, as the case may be. The problem I have with this is the minimum funding goal is 22,000 euros for the adventure game engine. Now, say you back this by picking the Game Boy Advance, and say you're really adventurous and you're going to go for PlayStation 1. Say this only gets funded to the adventure game engine. That style of game does not do well on the Game Boy Advance. I don't know if anybody out there's played a Game Boy Advance adventure game, like point and click, like Broken Sword and things like that. It's not very fun on that small screen. But say you chose Game Boy Advance and your intention was to make a new RPG. If this does not reach 100,000 euros, you're not going to get access to the RPG engine. So what the problem is, this is confusing because it takes out the incentive for people that are only interested in doing, say, RPG engine for Game Boy Advance, or they want to do a 3D engine or game engine style game for the Sega Dreamcast. Well, there's no incentive to back this, especially currently looking at this, because it does not look like it's going to reach 150,000 euros. Obviously, with Kickstarter, you're not charged unless the project is, successful. I just don't see the way this is set up. There's no incentive unless there's a huge push and this thing busts, some more. It's currently not even breaking the minimum. So it's like it just kind of deflates incentive. It takes away all the fun, it takes all the interest, how this is set up. And it's sad because something like this would be freaking amazing in the retro gaming community. If you want to check out games that use tools that this setup that they're going for with this Kickstarter is based on, then check out their website. It's oriensoft.com, I believe. I'll have links in the description below. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this? You excited for it?